I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. All right, what's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like, imixwhatilike.org, at I Mix What I Like for all your relevant social media. Again, I'm Jared Ball, happy to be your host, and I'm very happy to be joined by the newly elected Vice President of the Vice President for the Green Party. Just won the nomination with Howie Hawkins, Ms. Angela Walker. Welcome to the show and congratulations.
Thank you.
So you are fresh off your nominating convention for the Green Party, and you all have just secured the nomination, and we'll be running you as Vice President to Howie Hawkins president on the Green Party ticket. And as we talked about in advance, the very first question I have for you is well, first, forgive me. Let me back up. I'm a little excited and rushing a little bit. Forgive me, everybody. Angela Walker, you first of all, if I remember correctly, and correct me on this, in one of your campaign videos, you identified yourself as a Black woman, as a member of the queer community, as a truck driver, and I want to say something along the lines of radical revolutionary, some sort of ism or ist. You could sort of add to that if you would. But let's just start there with that as your location for your entrance into these electoral politics in the Green Party. Could you talk a little bit about who you are, your background, and then, of course, we'll get into the importance of your campaign.
Well, first off, thank you for making space for me. I really, really appreciate this, and for having me on. And I had to hurry up and put my headphones on because my neighbors are like living their best life right now. So.
And you're getting a lot of calls of congratulations to family, to loved ones, as is rightfully the case. And I appreciate you making time to have this conversation again, fresh off the convention floor. So I appreciate that.
It's wild right now. Yes. So, my name's, for folks, new, my name's Angela Walker. I am now the Vice Presidential Nominee for the Green Party. Yes, we are running. We just got jumped up to the big time general election. So, Biden, that individual currently occupying the White House, come with it. We're here for it. And I am originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is all the folks you just heard me on the phone with. My kid. I am the mother of one. I am a grandmother of 5. I am a truck driver. I live in Florence, South Carolina. I'm queer. I am a socialist.
That was the ism. I didn't want to put that label on you. Forgive me. Like I said, I was prepared and I wasn't prepared, and then I was prepared that I wasn't. And I didn't want to. I love to hear you say that. And forgive this interruption, but I just wanted to stop there for a second. I mean, that is, I think, an amazing sort of intro. A mother, a grandmother, a truck driver, a Black woman, a queer socialist, and not just a truck driver in South Carolina. All of that to me sounds quite fascinating in and of itself, before we even get to anything else. But anyway, please go ahead. Forgive that interruption.
Oh, not at all. Next year, it will be 20 years that I have been a commercial driver. I spent 4 years driving for Milwaukee County Transit. I was the legislative director for the Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 998, during the Wisconsin uprising and a little bit past it. I ran for office for the first time at the prompting of my late friend Rick Kissell in Milwaukee against former Sheriff David Clark. And for folks who might not know who that is immediately, you nod like you do. Yep. So yeah, that's the cat with the cowboy hat on Fox News that hates Black people, that guy. And took 20% of the vote from him in that election, which shocked everybody. So, 2015, I was approached by my friend who just transitioned himself, Mimi Soltysik, Emilio Soltysik, about running with the Socialist Party of the USA, which as you know, is also, we have an endorsement from them in this election as well. And so I did, and swore off politics in 2016, didn't want nothing to do with it. I wasn't organizing. I wasn't doing anything. Moved to South Carolina, started driving a dump truck and said, I'm good. I want to stay here in my little hole, and, where I can plug in, I will, because, I've always been supportive, of course, of the movement for Black Lives. A lot of their platform aligns with ours. So, it was always a natural synergy, and they put out a policy document in 2015, 2016 that should be required reading for all of our people. So, folks who haven't checked that out need to. And yeah, I was done, and now I'm not.
Let me ask you, another sort of preliminary question that I think is of interest to the few folks that will watch this program, and I hope some of the media and journalists that I hope will be inspired to follow up with you for more discussion after they see this. But how do you deal with this question of race, quote unquote, versus LGBTQ community politics? A lot of times we hear, there is this discussion within the Black community about which set of politics should take precedence. Is there a disagreement in politics? Where do each relate to one another, and so on? How do you deal with that discussion, or respond or enter that conversation?
That is an excellent question. And the answer is simply intersectionality. We are multifaceted people. Blackness is not a monolith. And there's a whole lot of our folks who need to stop treating it like it is. There is no one way to be Black. We are Black with disabilities. We are Black working class. We are Black elite. We are Black intellectuals. There are as many ways to be Black as there are Black people. And so for me, it is not an either or, it is a both and. I am Black and queer and female at the same time, and working class, and, over 40, and all of these different places where we intersect. It's not a battle it's not the oppression Olympics. And I've had arguments with people about this, where it's just it's not, you don't have to pick or choose. Black people are queer. Black people are all along the LGBTQIA, gender nonconforming, and non-binary rainbow. We're all here. We're all represented. And when we're lifting up Black lives, all Black lives matter, or none do. And so, it's not an either or, it's a both and.
So, let me just say, the last time I was at all involved with the Green Party, there was this argument about its relationship to socialist politics, and at the time, this is 10 plus years ago, there was a resistance within the Green Party to adopt a socialist platform. So I'm interested I hadn't been following it close enough to know that there had been this sort of coming together of the Socialist Party and the Green Party, and the adoption of those sort of platform agenda. So before we get into some of the more questions that I specifically invited you on to, talk a little bit about what is the Green Party platform? What is the platform you and Howie Hawkins are running on? And why should any of us vote for you?
Well, the platform is, and the party is explicitly eco-socialist. And to, kind of highlight it, if you are somebody who is very concerned with ending the oppression of human beings, it seems, particularly under capitalism, it seems to me that there should be a natural synergy. For me, there's a natural synergy between lifting up the rights of oppressed people and also fighting against capitalist exploitation of this planet, her resources, and her non-human life. Those things are not incompatible. There is a synergy there. And so I want to say it was either 2016 or 2018, the Green Party they redesignated themselves as an eco-socialist party, because they are making that connection between fighting for the end of the exploitation of the planet, fighting for an end to war, fighting for an end to U.S. imperialism and all these things that come with that, and also fighting for the rights of oppressed people. And, having policies that, since their inception, that are anti-oppressive. Just making, coming out and saying we are recognizing that capitalism is where all of these things stem from, and we are rejecting that. So, and as far as, when you say us, I'm thinking you're talking about Black folks specifically.
Well, yes, I do want to get to that, but initially I meant anybody in the voting public initially, and then I do specifically want to get to Black people and what because you've even addressed in video I've seen that specifically, or you wrote a letter, if I remember correctly, to the Black community explaining why Black people should vote for you, and I want to get to that specifically, but just in general, why should anyone vote for you, and what are some of those specific platform agenda items that you all are running on?
Full strength Medicare for all as a community controlled national health service, where you are eliminating these private insurance companies that are acting as gatekeepers over who can have access to care and who doesn't. And then they're not accountable to the people that they're treating. That's ours. The Democrats got a hold of it, watered it down, and pushed this, to the public as something they came up with. No, sweetheart. That's ours. And
if I see the so-called Biden-Sanders collaborative platform development for the DNC for Biden's campaign, they've already scrapped that. The Medicare for all is already off the table for Biden's campaign, even with the supposed involvement of the radical or progressive or revolutionary Bernie Sanders. So this would be one important distinction. If people want Medicare for all, this would be the place to vote, because Biden has already apparently made it clear that that's off his agenda. So I'm sorry, please continue. Yeah.
Oh, no. But even before that, he got together with Sanders, and whatever this thing they just recently did was, he had already said that this is not even something that he's considering. Just like talking about, measures to end mass incarceration, one of which being defund the police. Joe Biden has already said he doesn't support that.
In fact, he's going to increase it by 300 million. Just again, if we're going to draw some distinction.
Just saying. I mean, when you talk about tone deafness, just on the face of that, if the public, and this is across the country, across socioeconomic backgrounds, people are really being loud and have been loud about things like decriminalizing marijuana, about Medicare for all, about calling a moratorium on, rents and things like that.
And I'm sorry to interrupt again, but Biden's not even getting rid of not even legalizing marijuana. He's not even doing that.
No.
And this is after Sanders is supposedly involved helping push the platform. And again, I apologize. Please.
No, jump in, because I mean, the thing about it is, people just have to listen. They just have to listen. What is this man offering you that you need to give him your vote? And there are a lot of people that feel like, okay, as long as we just get him in there, we can push him leftward. He has absolutely no incentive to do anything you want him to do once you give him what it is he wants. It just doesn't make sense. He has no reason to do that. In fact, the corporate masters that he serves, he has plenty of incentive to not do that, So I mean.
So I'm sorry. So we got the marijuana legalization. We got the Medicare for all. We got the I forgot already what the environmental justice piece. Defunding the police.
Yes.
Please continue with any of the other core platform agenda items we should know about.
Reparations for African Americans. Respecting the sovereignty of Native Americans and doing what we can as far as mitigating and relieving the harm that has been done to indigenous communities in this country. Disbanding ICE and getting rid of the concentration camps around the country. Decriminalizing sex work. Making sure that everyone has access to safe and healthy housing that is not half of your monthly income. One of the things that we're talking about, particularly, that's on people's minds with COVID happening, is making sure that people have a guaranteed income above poverty. So you do not have people who are being forced out into a plague, basically, which I've been working the entire time. So it's something that I get it.
So Angela, Miss Walker, all of these, all of these agenda items sound wonderful, but the first question and obviously the first criticism that we hear of all of that from the so-called liberals, even the so-called liberals, is, well, how are we going to pay for all of that? How are you going to fund all of this healthcare and education, and you're legalizing this and defunding that? How are you going to do that? We just are usually told we can't afford it in this country of a $20 trillion annual GDP.
First off, to anybody that asks me about how we're going to pay for it, my question to them is, what did your government just do with all that money for small businesses? Who did it go to? The money that just materialized out of nowhere, because you can't pay people's rents to keep them from being evicted. You can't extend unemployment benefits indefinitely for the people that need them above poverty. You can't, institute a national test, trace, and quarantine program. You're going to force people back into the streets. Don't ask me about money and how we're going to fund nothing. I think we've demonstrated that the money is there if there's the political will to use it, on behalf of the people. And also in our campaign, if people go to our campaign website, there are whole policy papers where Howie has written how we fund it. In fact, it says how we pay for it all under the eco-socialist
how we pay for it.
I know. And one of the pieces, immediately is downsizing the military by 75%, recalling the troops home, and all of the money that is being spent, because that is the lion's share of the budget. Just like police expenditures are the lion's share of most municipal budgets. So downsize by 75%, you keep the military, operating at a reasonable, credible deterrent. And
75%. I mean, all of the hordes of savages that are being held at bay with all that military will come crashing into our country and invade and take us over and expand communism. And
being I'm a socialist, you ain't gonna get no. But no, seriously, do you really believe that though? And
I'm just saying, but these are the arguments, though. But these are always the standard arguments, and and people really do, and encouraged by a media environment that, of course, promotes this, and including an entertainment media environment that encourages this. People really believe if we defund the police, then immediately, rapists, murderers, and robbers will be at the door. And if we defund the military, then China and Russia and North Korea will all just come crashing in. Never mind all those Mexicans, over there. I mean, they're just going to all come crashing in and take all of our jobs and, force us to be communists and, all the other nightmares. So that's why I'm just asking you to, I'm just putting it on the table for you to address.
I want people to read more. Most people, and particularly just going back to defunding the military, we have a military presence in countries we don't need to have a military presence in. And think of why we're there. It isn't to benefit the people who live there. It's to take whatever it is they have under the ground that we want. And I think most people can agree on that, especially folks who were adults and paying attention during what I like to call Bush 2. But, around the time of 9/11, when it was just you knew what they were doing. You knew what this was about. And, war makes money. And so we're, if you stop that and bring those savings home, what can you reinvest your money in? Then all of a sudden, the rhetoric goes from we can't afford to we're rebuilding infrastructure in this country. We're restoring wetlands. We're putting people to work in the green sector, and not just greenwashing, a true green sector. Rebuilding the Citizen Conservation Corps and putting people to work working on infrastructure. We're revamping our public transit systems. We're revamping our housing systems. We're going over our food systems. All of these things. And so now,
by the way, that Green New Deal has been scrapped from the Biden-Sanders arrangement too, by the way, from what I understand, if I'm reading it correctly. Yeah. So.
And of course it has, because there's no benefit to their corporate masters for it, because this cuts them out. This is something that is in the hands of the people. And one thing that people don't understand, which is basically socialism 101, socialism is a true democracy. Because when you have socialism, everybody has a say in how something is run. If you have people who are coming together to have the means of production, that means that everybody who owns this factory has a part of it. You are all part owners. And in what is produced, everyone has a say. How it is used, everyone has a say. So you're not having this issue of overproduction or throwing things out there that, you know, the populace doesn't need. And then you have to create all this hype around it to make people go buy, which is what capitalism is. We're not doing that. So, you know, how much more valuable is your life when you're not being told constantly that you need to buy things to fill it up? So one thing I think people need to know, socialism, we've been red baited in this country for so long that when you say socialism, people get all scared. But when you say the Black Panthers and they're like, yeah, I'm like, yo, let me just remind you, they are explicitly socialist. So let's go there.
And it wouldn't be just them, by the way. I mean, we could remind people of Dr. King's affinity for socialism, Malcolm X's affinity, of course, Assata Shakur, who's still alive, and you know, a reminder, you know, I mean, all of these people that are still here and some who are gone, you know, almost all of them on some way or level or form dealt with that as a concept. Or some form of redistributionist politics, however people want to define it. But you are correct that the ism has been totally abused. A couple other things, you know, so another constant refrain is that a vote for you is a vote for Trump. What do you all say to that?
A vote for us is a vote for us. It's that simple.
Okay.
If you have, it's like Howie loves to break it down. I'm repeating because I think it's just really cute, but it's what you learn in kindergarten. If you have 3 columns, you have us, you have that individual in the White House, and you have that other guy that's running for the White House. If you vote for us, that goes for us. It's our vote. And being that, you know, we, unlike, you know, the other 2 parties in the duopoly, we support ranked choice voting and the abolition of the Electoral College. Let the people decide who they want and give them choices. And as far as, because the other thing that follows on the heels of that question is usually, you know, you're taking votes from Biden. Y'all are, first off, that assumes that, what is it, the upwards of 10 million people who chose to stay home in 2016, that assumes that had they shown up or not, you know, the people who voted on, you know, for third parties, which I did, that they would have voted Democratic. And a whole lot of the people who show up to vote third party are people who would be in that category that wouldn't vote at all. And I know this because people tell us all the time that if y'all were not running, I wouldn't bother. I'm not going for A or B. Neither one of these, they're not offering us anything. So the problem with the Democrats and this idea of spoiling is like, our answer is don't blame us, blame them. First off, they keep giving you candidates you can't support. If you have to hold your nose to cast a vote, we got a problem. And they're not listening to what people are telling them that they want. So if you have a candidate over here, you have folks over here that are offering you what you want, things that speak to your issues, why would you waste your vote on what you don't really want?
Because what we're being told, even by those who have often been labeled or claimed the label of radical, is that Trump is the worst threat to humanity ever. And this is, again, a very special election where we have to hold our nose. Now, to me, and my bias is clear, to me, this is what I've been hearing my entire adult life. People don't, a lot of people, particularly newer voters, really, unfortunately, I don't mean to sound like the older guy, but don't remember. I mean, this is exactly why we were told we had to vote for Clinton back in the early 90s, which was the last time I voted for a mainstream candidate. This is exactly what we were told. The only time we weren't told that really was in 2008, and that was because we had to support the first black man. That was really the first time, but it was still the same kind of thing. We don't need to have an agenda. We don't need to have an argument. We just need to vote for him because we got to give the brother a chance. If I heard that phrase one more time, but certainly, and people, I think you mentioned something about Bush too. People, I think, are forgetting how bad it was under this last Bush. I mean, people are acting like he's some sort of progressive superhero now in the face of Trump, when if you look beyond the horrific language of the current president, and I admit stylistically he is something special, but if you look at the policies, they don't diverge that greatly from really any of the last presidents. And I hate to say it, in some cases, particularly in terms of foreign policy and aggression, are even better than what Hillary would have been and what Biden will probably be should he win. Anyway, please respond to any of that before I ask another question or add to any of that if you like.
I think you made the point. I think that people have very short memories. I think that people don't remember the fact that Muslims were demonized under Bush too. It was big. That Islamophobia, xenophobia. Oh, now it's the people coming from Mexico and South America. This whole xenophobia. This did not start with the individual currently in the White House. That did not happen. And if we really want to get cute with it, the fact that this cat is a symptom, he is not the disease. And people, the folks in the ruling class know that. They know how easily distracted folks are. We like bread and circuses. It's like, just keep us entertained. This person is a buffoon. He's entertaining to some quarters. He's fine. But people are not looking at what is behind him. Those are the sinister people. And this is not new. What he represents is what this country is built on. And if we are serious about moving forward and healing as a country, and I think that it's happening, I'm seeing it, around the country, especially during this uprising, people are being forced to reckon with the fact that this is a country conceived in genocide of Native Americans, sustained by the enslavement of Africans and the continued exploitation of all of us. So, I think we have to get real with that.
So let's get to a little bit of what I specifically wanted to talk with you about, and I admit it took me longer to get here than I thought. But as people have this sort of new awakening, as I hear you maybe describing it, when they look up just aesthetically at the campaign of Hawkins and Walker, they're going to see what might look like the Democratic. They're going to see an older white guy with a younger black woman, maybe if he picks Susan Rice or Kamala Harris or whoever that is being threatened to be added to Biden. So in addition to what you've already talked about in terms of the Green Party and the politics of the party, I mean, aesthetically, is there something that you would want to say to that? Again, there's still going to be this older white guy and a black woman, vice president sidekick type thing. How specifically, if we're talking about this black and multi, world majority groups of people in uprising, when they look at the Green Party and see that just aesthetically, maybe before even addressing the politics, what do you think that does or does not say about your campaign or the party itself?
I think that it's significant if this is what people need. I think that it's significant to note that while people were begging Joe Biden to pick a black female running mate, we'd already done it. I was already here. And
so Howie didn't just snatch you up last week in competition with?
Not at all. Howie and I have known each other since 2014. Mm-hmm. So this was not like, oh yeah, I'm running, let me pick. No. And there were a bunch of names in the hat. And if you ever talk to him, he'll tell you that. Like, there were a bunch of people, they were throwing names around. He chose me because he knows my politics. And, we've had discussions. He knows where I stand on things. And I'm also somebody he felt like he could work with, that it's a partnership. It's not, I'm up here and you're there, which it is. And so,
but still, why wouldn't the party have nominated you and have he be the vice president or somebody else?
I don't want to be the president. It's that simple. I don't want to. And I've had people ask that question. It's like, don't draft me for that. I mean, honestly, my intention was to live quietly, drive my truck, and, be subversive wherever possible. But it was not to be the person in front of the march with the megaphone anymore. It wasn't to be the person, holding the banner anymore. Not like that. And so when I was asked to do it, it became a question for me personally of, you've been in a seething rage about the way this pandemic is being mishandled for the last 2-3 months. The ancestors have been preparing you for this opportunity. Here it is. The thing that you said you wouldn't do. And now there is a lot of imperative around this. Who are you if you refuse? And basically that's what it became for me. It's like, you can't say no to something that you're capable of doing. And especially now when people need us so much. So I just urge people to look beyond the aesthetics. Look at the policies, which is what you should be looking at anyway. But look at the policies. It's like, what are you being offered over here with category A? And what does category B have? Because you ain't even looking at category C, because ain't nobody considering them that has any sense. And yes, I said it. So it's between us and Mr. Biden, no matter who he picks to be his running mate, what are the policies and how well do their policies align with what it is you want? And if they don't, why would you support it?
So you mentioned, I heard you make a reference to the ancestors. How do you see your campaign answering their call, or this in the context of a Black liberation struggle or a struggle of African people in this country or this hemisphere? I'm just curious. Honestly, having heard you just make that reference, I'm just curious. That just popped into my head. How do you see that all connected?
I believe in Black liberation. I believe in Pan-Africanism. That my struggle for my liberation and the liberation of my people within these borders is linked to the struggle of oppressed people around the world, and making sure that, Black folks are free everywhere, and free of U.S. imperialism, free of capitalist exploitation. If it's something that I will fight for from my folks here, then it means all the way through the diaspora, it's the same story. So just thinking about what true Black liberation is, the thing that I think the thread that runs through all of it is Black self-determination, which is one thing that goes to, and one of those measures is community control of the entities that are in your community that touch your lives the most. You should have part ownership of financial institutions. Those financial institutions should be nationalized, should be socialized, so that you're not having these private banks. And they are accountable to us because that's our money. Talking about public schools. Community schools should serve the needs of the communities that they are situated in. They should reflect that community and offer services like wraparound services that the people in that community need, and community control of the police, which we touched on, and all of that. So, I think the biggest thing for our people that is the most important is the right to self-determination. And we decide how our communities function and what wealth, how we're creating ways to be okay and economic justice. And we have an economic bill of rights that ties into all of that as well.
One of the other specific questions that I always get pushback when I advocate an alternative party support is, never mind the initial, we just have to get Biden or we have to get Trump out, is always this argument about, well, the federal judges that he will appoint will have this particular negative impact on Black people and others as well. And I did, in some of my arguments, I've been pointing out, but Biden supported Kennedy, Scalia, Thomas, for their confirmations when he was in the Senate. What evidence is there that just having a Democratic, president is going to offer up something certainly progressive for federal judges or Supreme Court judges or anything like that? But how do you all answer that question? Because a lot of people, particularly in Black politics, use that particular argument to dissuade people from going in those alternative electoral direction.
Of course they do. And I have my regular answer, Clarence Thomas is Black. Do I need to say anything else? I mean, if this is what this is about, and it's about representation or making sure, this cat is Black and has done more harm to our community, commits harm to our community every chance he gets. So, I mean.
But they also talk about the federal judges throughout I focus on the Supreme Court in my question, but there's also that argument that throughout the country, they'll stack the federal bench. Sometimes I point out, that relatively speaking, the amount of Black people who are incarcerated more end up dealing with state courts than federal courts. But anyway, I'm curious if you had a specific response to that question, because that particular trope comes up all the time. Anything else to add about that?
Just looking at the fact that Democrats don't. Just because someone has a D behind their name does not necessarily mean that they're progressive and that they support progressive policies or progressive, folks running down ballot. That doesn't mean that. And I think we have to start taking these elections or appointments case by case. And, it's very convenient to want to see somebody that, okay, this person has a D behind their name, I'm okay. We can't do that. And I think people just have to accept the fact that we're going to have to hold the people that we elect accountable, regardless of what their designation is. And also that we can't expect people to look out for us just because this is their political affiliation. They've proven over and over and over again that they don't. And we need to own that.
All right, I just have one more question, and I appreciate your time. You all mentioned that reparations is part of your platform, and I know that's important for a lot of people in the Black community to hear. So one, I'm wondering if there's something specific in terms of how you all would disperse this reparations. And then I also would want to hear your response to my own admitted critique of what I hear is most of the discussion of reparations. For instance, that tactically, it's not a question of do Black people deserve it for me. It's a question of tactically, how would you get a country that is, never mind anti-Black, but just concerned with self-interest to vote at the levels they would have to transfer this kind of wealth in whatever form just to Black people. So I've tactically taken to the argument that the electoral, at least political call, should be for a redistribution of not just the federal tax base, but policy that redistributes the entire gross domestic product, that $20 trillion that, at least before this crisis, the country would generate. In other words, if you redistribute that, going back to one of your earlier answers, there's no need for any group to argue. Even to your point about oppression Olympics, there's no need to argue about, well, my group was more oppressed than your group, and my group was oppressed this way, and your group got that, because there'd be just so many resources to go around that everybody, and then within specific communities. So after that, then Black people could get together and figure out what else we would need specifically to heal all the other spiritual, cultural, and all the other. But in terms of material, if we targeted that, so anyway, if you have an answer to that or response to that, I'd love to hear it. But just in general, what is the Green Party approach to reparations dispersal or distribution?
Well, initially, it is enacting H.R. 40. I want to say it's H.R. 40. Let me find my notes.
Yeah, H.R. 40.
H.R. 40.
Which just calls for a study, though. Or H.R. 48, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No, it's H.R. 40.
Okay,
but
40,
while you are having, this study happening, you're also ending the war on drugs. You are freeing people who are convicted of marijuana crimes and also giving them priority in the legal grow industry. And also making, under our administration, we have an economic bill of rights. So you have people already getting a guaranteed income above poverty to level things out, because one of the things that we have to acknowledge is the loss of Black wealth under the system that we live under the last 100 years, the theft of land from Black farmers, all of those things that come into that. And so you have to have an economic support that already levels out the playing field. And then we can start looking at ways that African Americans need to be repaid for what has been happening. That does not feed any cash that you give people. You're not feeding it back into the same system that's been exploiting them. Doesn't make any sense. And so one of the things that we've always said is it is up to individual communities to decide what is best for those communities. And so, you're not going to take a top-down approach and tell Black people in this country what they need. You need to make sure that there is an economic plan in place to keep people level. You make sure that people have access to basic needs, including healthcare, housing, things like that. And ending the criminalization of being Black. Ending the system of mass incarceration in this country, letting people free and giving priority to people in the legal grow industry, giving priority to the communities that have been most harmed by the drug war. And, it's a whole bunch of other pieces that go into that. But what I'm saying is reparations is not just this one thing.
Well, Angela Walker, first of all, congratulations once again, and thank you for taking the time to talk with me and us a little bit about your campaign, and definitely good luck. Please tell folks how they can follow up and keep in touch, and of course, sign up to vote for you.
Yes, please. We will be on the ballot in, I want to say, 30 states.
And I'm sorry, the goal, and forgive me, the goal is, if I remember, I meant to ask you, the goal, right, is again to get 5% of the national vote to hit that threshold for federal supporting funds in the next election. Is that correct? Do I have that correct?
My goal is to win. My goal is to flip the government. I came to take the White House. That is my goal. And I want people to be very clear about that, because traditionally when you talk to third parties, we're just running for, to raise issues, or we're running to, to get the 5%. 5% is great, but I want the White House. I want to flip the government. That is what I came to do.
That's what's
and
up.
I think people need to understand it. We're not here to play, especially not now. People are dying in ways that they have not had to deal with before. I mean, this government, this is the Gilded Age all over again, where they're not even trying to hide it. You've got all of this PPP money and you are handing it to mega churches and hate groups and rich people. And I got friends right now doing GoFundMe so they don't get evicted. It has to stop, or this thing is gonna blow. So this isn't the year to be playing. And I will be honest, we came to take the White House. And
I love it. I love it. Thank you for checking me on that. I appreciate it.
I swear it wasn't intended to be
No. It was important. I appreciate it. I think that's a great approach. Yeah, very inspiring. So again, tell people where they can follow up and sign up to get you all in that White House.
Anybody that are at www.howie.com. HowieHawkins.us, and everything you need to find about our campaign, our bios, the deeper dives into the pieces of the platform, all the policy papers that he's, really in-depth stuff to show you how we pay for this, and breakdowns, where we stand on marijuana, where we stand on mass incarceration, things like that. All of that's on that website. And also, you follow me on Twitter. I am at Angela N. Walker. And, if folks have questions, slide in my DMs. And, if there's something they need to know and they, haven't seen it on the platform, we can have that discussion. But we will be on the ballot, I want to say, in 30 states. And we are working to get ballot access in all 52. So that's what we're working on.
Again, Angela Walker, thanks again. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Like Fred Hampton said, and I know you understand, we say peace to you if you're willing to fight for it. So peace, everybody. Take care.
I say. Thank you so much.
I mix what I like, 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 what I like.